The morning breeze in Bakersfield carried the scent of damp earth and silent promise. Juan Ramirez woke up every day at 4:30 a.m., pulled on his worn-out boots, and left for the fields with the quiet determination of someone who knew the world could collapse at any moment and still kept going. At 42, with sunburned skin and calloused hands, he was known as the most reliable worker in the harvest. Never late, never complained. "Juan, you ought to take it easy, man," said Peter, the farm owner. "You've done more this morning than most guys do in a week." Juan simply smiled. "As long as I can work, I'm good." But his world didn't revolve around crops. It revolved around his wife, Ana, and his daughter, Camila, who was about to become the first in the family to graduate from high school. She was Juan's pride, the reason behind every sleepless night and every ignored pain. At breakfast, Ana placed a cup of coffee in front of him and smiled with tired eyes. "Just one more week, love. Our girl's graduating. You think you can keep from crying?" Juan let out a short laugh. "No promises." Camila came downstairs holding her graduation gown, her eyes shining. "Dad, you'll be there, right? Front row?" "Of course, mija. I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world." But the world doesn't honor promises made by loving fathers. That morning, as he soaked in the quiet joy of his family, a white government car drove slowly down the street. He didn't see it. Not that day. But someone did. And they made the call. The school gym was packed. Red and gold balloons hung from the ceiling, the orchestra rehearsed the opening notes of the march, and parents squeezed into their seats with phones in hand, ready to capture the big moment. Juan, wearing a light blue dress shirt and a nervous smile, held Anna's hand as they looked for Camila's name in the ceremony program. "It's today, love," Anna whispered. "She made it. We made it." Juan nodded, his pride making his throat tighten. Camila was more than a daughter. She was proof that all his sacrifice had meant something. Outside, on the sidewalk, two ICE agents, a blond man with a cold stare and a woman with a stern expression, stood watching the entrance. They had received an anonymous tip 2 days earlier. Farm worker, undocumented, will be at his daughter's graduation at Jefferson High. "You sure you want to do this today?" the woman asked. "Our job doesn't take holidays," the man replied. Inside, Camila walked down the stairs to join her classmates in line. She scanned the crowd for her parents, smiling and waving when she spotted them. "There she is," Juan said, his eyes glowing. "My little girl." He stood up, ready to film, but before he could press record, a firm hand landed on his shoulder. "Juan Ramirez?" He turned. The two agents were there, uniformed, cold. "We have a detention order. You are in the country illegally. You need to come with us." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna stood up, sobbing. Camila hadn't noticed yet. In shock, Juan slowly raised his hands. "But my daughter, today is her day." "I'm sorry. Let's go." The seat where Juan had been sitting remained empty, a silent symbol of an irreplaceable absence. Anna sat frozen, her face buried in her hands, while the parents around her whispered, trying to understand what had just happened. On stage, Camila received her diploma, smiling with pride, unaware that her father, who had dreamed of this moment for years, was at that very instant being handcuffed in the parking lot. Inside the ICE van, Juan stared out the window, his eyes fixed on the school building growing smaller in the distance. He didn't cry. He couldn't. It was as if his soul had gone numb. "Can I at least call my wife?" he murmured to the agent. "You'll get one call at the detention center. She needs to know I'm okay, that I didn't leave by choice." The agent kept his eyes on the road, unmoved. At the detention center, the world shrank to gray walls, muffled voices, and hollow eyes. Juan was placed in a cell with other men, some young, others older. All wore the same lost expression. Time didn't move there. There were no days, only waiting. In her bedroom, Camila held her diploma with trembling hands. Anna, sitting on the edge of the bed, tried to be strong. But strength is hard to find when your heart is in pieces. "Mama, did he see me?" Camila whispered. Anna hesitated, swallowed hard. "He was there, mija. He saw you, and he was so proud." Camila closed her eyes, trying to picture her father in the crowd, smiling. But all she could see was the empty chair. That night, Anna wrote a letter to Juan, and she prayed that somehow he would know their fight was far from over. The days inside the detention center blended together like ink in dirty water. There were no clocks, only the sound of guards' boots, the constant artificial light, and the low murmur of men who no longer knew if they were waiting for freedom or just a little dignity. Juan tried to keep his head up. He slept little, ate even less. At night, he spoke softly with his cellmate, Ernesto, an aging Guatemalan man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. "You got someone out there?" Ernesto asked one night. "My wife, my daughter, she graduated the same day they took me." Ernesto let out a long sigh. "They know exactly what they're doing, Juan. They wait for the most important day to break you inside." Juan stayed silent, staring at the ceiling stained with moisture. He wouldn't break. He couldn't. 2 weeks later, he received a letter from Anna. He read every line with teary eyes. She wrote about missing him, staying strong, and believing he would come back. Attached to the letter was a drawing from Camila, the three of them hand in hand, smiling. Inside the envelope was something else, too, a business card from a lawyer named Robert Klein. "Friends from church gave us his name," Anna had written. "He said there's hope." Juan held the card as if it were made of glass. For the first time in days, he felt something different from despair, a faint glimmer of possibility. In the cell, he showed the card to Ernesto. The older man smiled. "Could be your way out." But nothing was guaranteed. And Juan knew, for every hope, the system had 1,000 ways to say no. Robert Klein wasn't the kind of lawyer who appeared in flashy TV commercials with exaggerated promises. He was a quiet man, with a wrinkled suit and eyes that held both exhaustion and compassion. When he entered the visitation room at the detention center, Juan studied him cautiously, as he now did with everyone. "Mr. Ramirez," Robert said, extending his hand, "your wife spoke very highly of you. She said you haven't missed a day of work in 17 years. Juan shook his hand firmly. "I didn't come to this country to hurt anyone." Robert nodded and opened a folder full of documents. "Your case is tough. You entered without documentation. You don't have legal status, and you weren't identified until now because you've never had trouble with the law. Unfortunately, that doesn't earn points in the system. And working hard, providing for my family, that doesn't count for anything?" Robert looked him in the eye. "To me it does, but not always to the law." He explained that the plan was to request a stay of deportation based on family ties and community contribution, letters, testimonies, support from the church, neighbors, and also the odds. "They're small," he said honestly, "but they exist." Juan closed his eyes for a moment. "Even if I have to wait for years, I'll wait. I just want to go back to my family." Outside, Anna was collecting signatures, sending emails, recording videos for social media. Camila was talking to teachers, neighbors, pastors, all ready to vouch for Juan. The community was rallying. Small actions were forming a wall of support. But in immigration court, justice wasn't blind. It was cynical. And that wall needed to be stronger than the cold indifference of a system that fed on the suffering of the invisible.
The day of the hearing arrived. Juan wore a borrowed shirt, clean but wrinkled, and kept his shoulders straight despite the weight pressing down on him. Robert had told him to speak calmly, look the judge in the eye, and, most importantly, tell the truth, his truth. In the cold courtroom, silence was broken only by the clacking of a secretary's keyboard. The judge, a stern-looking woman, adjusted her glasses and began listening to the arguments. On the other side, the government attorney read out an impersonal list of facts: illegal entry, lack of legal status, violation of federal law. Robert stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Juan Ramirez has lived in the United States for 17 years. He has never committed a crime, has paid taxes using an ITIN number, and raised a bright daughter who just graduated with honors. We have letters from neighbors, pastors, employers, and her school. We're not asking for amnesty, we're asking for humanity." The judge stared at him. "Humanity is not listed in Section 237 of the Immigration and Nationality Act." But she continued listening. Juan was called to testify. "Why did you come to this country?" she asked. Juan took a deep breath. "Because my country didn't offer a future for my family, and I wanted my daughter to have a chance. Just one chance." "And why did you stay undocumented for so long?" "Because every time I thought about turning myself in, I saw her eyes. And I told myself, just one more year." One became 2, then 17. The room fell silent. The judge thanked him and said the decision would be given in writing, within 90 days. Juan was led back to the detention center, but this time he carried something new in his chest. Hope. Fragile, but alive. The days that followed were a silent torture. Juan woke up every morning hoping to hear his name called by the unit officer, but the voice never came. The waiting ate away at him, more than the cold of the cell, more than the terrible food, more than even the longing. It was the uncertainty that killed him little by little. "Any news?" Ernesto would ask every time Juan returned from the mailroom. "Not today," he replied, wearing the same tired smile as always. Outside, Ana and Camila kept the campaign alive. They recorded an emotional video telling Juan's story, and within days it went viral. Local radio stations called, a small community TV channel asked for an interview, and even a city councilman wrote a public letter supporting his right to stay. Still, Ana couldn't sleep. She read every email from the lawyer 10 times, trying not to lose hope, but fearing the worst. Camila, on the other hand, found a strength she didn't know she had. "I'm not going to let Dad be forgotten," she said with conviction. "If they think he doesn't belong in this country, then they don't know what this country is really about." On an ordinary morning, after almost 2 months of waiting, Juan was called. "Ramirez, report to room 4, now." His heart raced. His hands trembled as he was led down the narrow hallway. Inside, Robert was waiting with an envelope in his hands. "Is this it?" Juan whispered. Robert nodded, but didn't open it. He simply placed it in Juan's hands. Juan held the letter with trembling hands. His eyes moved across the lines, searching desperately for some kind of mercy hidden between the formal, unforgiving words. When he finished reading, he didn't speak. He just looked at Robert, and the lawyer already knew. Silence was enough. "Denied," Robert said quietly. "No right to appeal."
The floor seemed to vanish beneath him. Juan's breathing grew heavy, as if the air had turned to stone. But what about my family? My daughter? They didn't consider the family ties strong enough to stop the removal. What more was I supposed to do? Robert had no answer. He simply looked away. Within a week, Juan was transferred to a nighttime flight. Shackled at the wrists and ankles, he sat between two other deportees. None of them spoke, none of them cried. They just stared ahead with the hollow gaze of men who had watched their world collapse. When the plane landed in El Salvador, it was still dark. The air was hot, dense, unfamiliar. He stepped onto the soil of the country where he was born, but it no longer felt like home. He was alone. No house, no job, no plan. In the months that followed, Juan survived. He slept in a small room behind a mechanic shop, fixed engines, took whatever work he could find. He called Anna and Camilla whenever he could, but the calls were short and expensive. "Papa, when are you coming back?" "Soon, mija. I'm trying. I promise." Camilla hid her tears. Anna tried to stay strong. Juan started attending a small local church. There he met other deportees. One of them talked about routes, smugglers, crossing back again. But Juan hesitated. "I'm not a fugitive. No. You're a father. And that's stronger than any border." And just like that, the flame lit again. Faint, but burning. He would start over. He would try again. Because giving up was never an option.
Every morning in San Salvador, Juan felt the weight of distance and loneliness like a shadow that wouldn't leave his side. The ache for Ana, the image of Camila smiling in her last video, they pounded in his mind with almost unbearable force. He worked endless hours at the auto shop, sweating in the stifling heat, but his thoughts were always far away, in the U.S., where his family waited. "Papa, when are you coming back?" Camila's voice echoed in his memory. He held the phone, words caught in his throat, unable to give a real answer. At church, among tired faces and familiar stories, Juan found a new strength. With other deportees, he began to organize meetings, search for information, and sketch out plans. The desire to return grew each day, but so did the fear. Fear of the journey, fear of being caught again, fear of never seeing Camila grow up. One night, sitting under the flickering light of a candle, he wrote Ana a letter, each word carved from his chest. "My dearest Ana, every day without you is a battle, but I'm not giving up. I'm fighting to return. To live beside you and Camila again. I know it won't be easy, but the love I carry for our family is stronger than any wall. Stay strong, mi amor. Take care of our daughter until I'm home. With love, Juan." Even in despair, one discovered that hope was the last thing to die, and as long as it lived, he was never truly alone. The struggle continued, difficult and uncertain, but he wouldn't stop until he felt Camila's embrace again, and the warmth of the home he helped build. Because to Juan, going home wasn't just a dream, it was a mission.